All right, we're live. So it's Jason Hull here with the DoorGrow Show, and I'm hanging out with Ray Hespin. Did I say it right?
You got it right, man.
Property Meld. And Property Meld is this really cool new software that is the first to tackle the issue of automating maintenance between vendors and tenants. Does that sound accurate?
Yep, that sounds accurate. It's the number one pain point today for property managers is trying to figure out how to get that repair done for the tenant. They got to coordinate with vendors. When can we get out to your property? Tenants, when can we get in? And so our software basically coordinates that with quite a bit of automation using our software.
So I think a lot of questions that people have related to this is, well, I've already got AppFolio, or I've already got Buildium, or I've already got Propertyware. I've got this software, and if they log into this, if I can get them to log into this, they submit maintenance requests through that, or we force them and say you have to do it through that. So, which makes the hurdle kind of difficult. But then the challenge there, a lot of property managers I think will be thinking is, well, how would I use this software? So I'd love to tackle that question. And then I'd also love to hear like what your software does.
So that's, honestly, the first question that myself or any salesperson that we have gets is, I've already got this, and this is how we submit maintenance requests. So
right.
Our usual follow-up is saying, well, that's excellent. We sell to people alongside that software. And that kind of, gets people thinking, well, what do you mean? You're not competitors? And so, no, we're not. I said, but what happens after you receive that request? And then we start getting to talking about what our software tackles, which basically is all the after the receiving it part. It's a very manual process. So you have a tenant that submits a request. Well, guess what? That property manager's got to get it to that vendor. Hey, when can you get out to the property? Give me some time. So then they're getting back with the tenant. Hey, when can we get inside your unit? Going back and forth, phone calls, emails, and that's just to schedule a time. So guess what? You still got to call to make sure it's done, right? You don't want an angry tenant. But then also you want to check in with that tenant, make sure that they're happy, satisfied with the work. These are all very manual processes that, based on the level of sophistication or process of these property management companies, can really leave some gaps that can either cost them in not only man hours, but reputation, online reputation as well. So we take that piece, that coordination piece of maintenance, and we automate that through our system. And the beautiful thing is we take care of it, but we also keep the property manager up to speed of what's going on every step of the way, when it's scheduled, when it's done, what the tenant thought of the repair. So we do that all for them.
So software just takes care of all of that. So how much work is this saving a property manager or a maintenance coordinator usually?
So the whole, and just in maintenance coordination, it's a heavy burden, and just to exclude the follow-up process, it's about 10 to 25 hours for about 500 unit operation. And depending on the sophistication of their processes, it can stray outside of that, but it's pretty significant, 10 to 25 hours a week.
A week, so, okay.
Yeah, so 40 to 100 hours a month in just making sure things are going according to plan. It's quite a bit.
Yeah, so it sounds like even small property managers then could probably benefit from this, taking this burden off of their shoulders and negotiating.
Mm-hmm. So what we like to do is with the small ones, they recognize as automations and systems are going to allow them to expand their portfolio without having to worry about hiring somebody, bringing another person on board, another head, because that's a job on its own, managing personnel. So if they can increase the number of doors they manage by utilizing smart systems such as Property Meld and others, they kind of want to go that route. So even small ones are able to kind of centralize, automate some things, get some things off their plate as well.
Yeah, really cool. So here's another question. A lot of times, like I spoke on the phone today for a guy that wanted a website that was a carpet cleaner, right? Mm-hmm. And one challenge I think property managers deal with vendors is that a lot of vendors are really low tech. Mm-hmm. And so how does this work? How intuitive is the tool? How would this work with vendors? Because carpet cleaners and handymen and a lot of these guys are not real tech savvy? Is this something, a system? Because the number one challenge with software is adoption, like getting people
Right.
to use it. So tell me how that kind of works with vendors. I'm really curious about that.
So the demographics in handyman services are changing. If you look even in the last 5 years, I'm trying to remember, I'll pull plumbing statistics for you. Average median age of a plumber, like I think it was 5 years ago, was 50 years old.
Yeah.
So you have these plumbers that are, kind of an older generation, but the median pay is like $56,000. So you're having these employment gaps, right? To where there's actually a big gap in plumbers coming into the market. So what you're having to happen is these kids are actually going to trade schools, and we're starting to get some younger people, and the demographics are changing. But that's not everything, right? So what we do is we try and make our system as simple as possible for vendors. You have to remember, they don't like talking on the phone. I'll use an example that we were demoing for this one lady down in Atlanta, and she basically was, as we were demoing, she was having one of her plumbers text her saying that the tenant's not answering the phone, and she's texting the tenant, "Why aren't you answering the phone?" "Well, I didn't recognize the number." So this is happening as we're selling to her, and we're like, boom, we got her. So the same frustrations happen, for property managers being on the phone and stuff. Same things happen with vendors. They don't want to be on the phone calling up. The number one issue for them is actually getting the tenant, to figure out when they can get in the unit. So we're doing some automation for them. Our rule of thumb is basically, for the simplicity of the system, if Joe Schmo, and I use that name just purely as anybody, if they can't learn the system in 2 minutes or less in a training video, it's too complicated. So we designed the vendor side, the maintenance side, to be extremely simple, that anybody can learn it. And it hasn't really been a hurdle for anybody.
Okay, cool. So that is not really been an issue, getting vendors to use it. So the feedback from vendors is probably pretty positive then, if this is a challenge for them as well.
Well, one thing we're even having too, Jason, is vendors are trying to team up with our system to say, hey, we love this system. Can we get it into our property management groups, because you're saving us time, and not to mention, if they're in the system and they're an easy way to dole out work, what better way to solidify yourself as the primo vendor if you're in the system and you're using the easiest way to assign and complete work. So we actually just had some pairing up with vendors and ways that we can strengthen those partnerships.
Yeah, that's it's a pain point with vendors, and it's actually an annoyance of property managers. That vendors are always clicking on the pay-per-click ads. Vendors are always calling them up. Vendors are always trying to get on board as an approved vendor, and they're always targeting them. It's like me. I have guys from India, for example, always trying to become my next web designer. I'm like, sorry guys, we've got it handled. So they've got vendors contacting them all the time, for these sort of things. And so this would be this way of them securing their spot. So how difficult is it? Is it as easy as text message? How does this communication happen between a vendor and a tenant?
So the way it works is we've got a cool little scheduling piece where basically a vendor is able to pick availability right from their phone of when they can make it out to that property, and a tenant right from their phone, they can select when it's there. We're notifying the property manager all in the meantime. The way that people are let known that, hey, you've got work, or hey, we need to schedule something at your unit, we employ both email and text messaging. So that way we're sure that they get it. And it's great. They can sit right through the email. They can click the button. It'll take them right where they need to go, or even on the text message. They click on the link right in the text message. It takes them right to that scheduling piece that they need to go to. Okay,
cool. So is your system texting and emailing and doing this? It
yes.
Is. Okay.
So there's a platform that the app resides on, Property Meld's app. But the piece of getting people in there, we don't expect people to go and just hang out on Property Meld all day long.
Right.
So we're sitting there sending them an email, sending them a text, hey, just letting you know you got something that you need to address, and they can click right through there and take them right where they need to go.
This sounds genius. So okay, so the app, tell me about the app. So is this like an app, like an iPhone app that you download from the App Store, or is this like a web app, or like how does this work that the vendor would need to set up?
So that's a great question, and one of the original things when we kind of came into look and putting this together was let's get an app for tenants. But first thing we did is we actually went to different companies that have worked to try and get apps and kind of consulted. And really, a web app is the future. If you can get away with not installing something on a tenant's phone, that's one barrier that you can do to get them to submit something. So it's the same with vendor, property manager, tenant. It's all web-based app. So it's built on a responsive web platform. So basically, they can use their phone, their tablet, computer, obviously.
They can click a link on the website, on your property management website. They can click a link. It pulls up this web app, they can work it right from their phone. It's intuitive. Or they can click a link in an email signature that a property owner had sent them, or the owner can just text them the link and say, here, go here, this sort of thing. So, okay, all right, great. And the same thing for the vendor side as well?
Yeah, so everybody actually logs in under the same login screen. So depending on your credentials is where we direct, what kind of features and stuff you have.
Okay.
So and one point as well on the web-based app. I mean, you do have to have I think we support everything down to Internet Explorer 7 or something like that.
Nicer than I am.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, it's like Facebook, and people don't realize this. They got the Facebook app on their phone, right? But if they went to facebook.com, they'd be surprised how they can do
pretty much the same. Yeah,
it's the same thing. Yeah, except you don't have to download something, and you don't have something on taking a battery or anything like that. So that's a big barrier for tenants. If they've got to download something on their phone that they're going to use once to twice a year, they're not going to be inclined to use it. So that's why web-based app was really had to be the platform for our system. So
will a vendor, say you guys, this goes fairly viral in the property management community, which I'm sure is a goal of yours, right? So say a vendor has like 20 different property management companies in his area that are using your software. Does he have one login, or does he have 20 logins?
He has one login. So we actually designed it for that because, vendors can be our biggest proponent, right? Hey, this is a way that we can automate some things, simplify some things. So they've just got one login, and there's a way that within the app that they can sit there and kind of segregate out who's working for what. So they can, from an operational standpoint, if they've got different site service agreements or whatever, they can kind of manage those independently. But yeah, so one login, they can log in and see all their work for all their property management companies.
You really probably should make an affiliate program for vendors, because these guys will be pushing. I imagine they'd be pushing property managers once they're working. I would imagine once they're working with your tool once with one company, they're going to be like, man, I wish every company had this. And how can they'll probably be thinking, how can I use this with normal people? Is that possible?
Well, we definitely are. I mean, we've got our vendors, right, that have become kind of cheerleaders for us, and we definitely capitalize on it. And another thing that we try and do is we try and make their lives easier, because if they like the software, again, they're going to be cheerleading through us. And one of the things we do is we even allow them to get paid right through our system as well. We pride ourselves in the least amount of strokes, key strokes, to getting paid out of any system. I mean, they line item something, it's automatically attached to that property. Property manager can utilize our system, Stripe, credit card, ACH, and they can pay directly. So they can get paid really quickly with very little work, not sending any email, not licking a stamp, putting it on an envelope, sending it their way.
Nice. So this has been designed from the beginning to be as intuitive as possible for the tenants, for the vendors, and for the property manager to see transparently what's going on, is what you're saying.
Right. So we don't do trainings for vendors and tenants. We don't need to. We've got short little videos when we do invites for them that have been, quite frankly, enough to where we don't have to. The only thing we have to do is for the property managers. And we can train somebody ins and outs of the software and make them the trainer, train the trainer kind of thing in an hour and 15 minutes. So you can go, it's very intuitive, and there's no retraining required. It's once you're in there, you're clicking. Everything's built to be intuitive. Where's this at? Right where it should be.
Yeah. So another question, a popular name that I hear are services out there like night tenders and some of these services where it's phone. And Appfolio recently added their own sort of, phone service like that, I think, to compete. And so, but they're largely for emergency maintenance. And
Correct.
so your tool still could automate that instead of using a human being service to try and negotiate all this stuff and streamline the whole process, make it easier for vendors still. But
Yeah.
would you still
So
be able to use a service like those for the emergency stuff?
absolutely. So, and I mean, without getting too much into it, we're always looking ways to better, capture a market, right? So one thing that we pride ourselves on is taking customer feedback and, utilizing that to improve the system. And that's been a big one, is how can we get even emergencies to be handled? So we're working on some solutions there. Absolutely. You can use night tenders to help you, for those emergency situations and kind of vet those, what's an emergency versus what's not, and get those proper people out for that flooding basement or, my house is on fire. Hopefully they called 911, but.
Yeah, right. And I know on websites, a lot of times on the submit a maintenance request sort of page, like we might build into a client site or for a client, they usually have the emergency steps that they want people to take beforehand. Maybe even turning off water mains and stuff like this kind of thing. So there is sort of that thing. Now, one thing you had mentioned to me when I was asking you and grilling you before, and when we had spoken the other day, and I was like, this sounds really cool, is I had asked you about the emergency maintenance, and you had mentioned like some numbers, and you had mentioned, I think you mentioned that a lot of your clients aren't really having as many emergency type of things go on, or it's not that big of the problem,
Right.
like that. So could you explain that?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, when kind of going in, and we try and build, to the best of our ability to serve our current customers as well as the ones that, that we're continuing to go after. So we asked them a lot of the times, you would kind of mention on the website, here's the phone number you call if this is an emergency, and these are the steps, this is what constitutes an emergency. But a lot of the times property managers do want to be in the know. They want to know when there's an emergency. So they want to be called, or their staff called so they can address it as quickly as possible. Because when you are dealing with flooding house or, something pretty serious, you're talking about your money ticking away if, if it becomes too bad. So it hasn't been too much of a barrier for us to sell not being able to do the emergency. But like I said, a lot of our clients that we're kind of working on for building this prospective emergency feature, they said, I still want to be knowing what's going on at that night when that comes. If that basement's flooding, I want to be in the know. So
I'll share this for those that are maybe watching this later or that are interested in this. So a friend of mine, Clint Collins, high-level property manager for a company called BMG Rentals. He's got like 2,000 doors. Did a webinar with him recently, and he recommends the number one thing you should get rid of right away is dealing with emergency maintenance. He's like, you should not, if you're a business owner, you should not be worrying about that at all. It shouldn't be interrupting your Christmas dinner, your Thanksgiving. He's like, I don't care how small you are, you should not be dealing with that first. So they should be getting rid of that. So I think if property managers are using your tool and they're still saying, I want to be involved in all of the emergency stuff and notify me in the middle of the night and that sort of thing, I think there's a mindset problem that their business is running their life instead of them being an owner of a business.
Right.
That's a mindset problem. So if you're watching this, do not handle the emergency maintenance yourself. You should be running a business, not a slave. So I'll compare this to an industry that I come from. So the tech industry, right? So I used to do IT stuff, and IT is the absolute worst. If you are in IT, you could be the highest paid person next to the top people at the company, in the organization, but you are still the company bitch. Like, you are on call at like 3 a.m.
True.
Then you don't get any love, because if things aren't working, everyone blames you, and if everything is working, nobody knows you exist.
Correct.
Right. So that's the world of IT, right? So I hated IT. So the only IT guys that really do well are the ones that are constantly noisy, that they're making everything work well. Which
Right.
these introverted guys are not usually really good at. Right. So yes,
You're absolutely right, though.
Same thing
It's
with
about systems.
Yeah, it's so business owners, the goal of a business owner is not to eventually manage a bunch of people. The goal of a business owner is to manage systems that manage people. And technology, I'm always touting this, but technology is always cheaper than people. So they're looking at Property Meld and they're thinking, well, we've got all these systems set up. And what they mean by systems is Steve handles the phone call and he goes through our list of vendors and finds out the area and sorts all this out. And then he's calling them and negotiating all this. And it's a full-time job for Steve. And meanwhile, they're shelling out probably how much, do you think, for a maintenance coordinator at a company?
Between 30 and 55 grand.
Full-time employee,
Yeah.
at least 30 to 50 grand a year, right? I mean, even a minimum wage employee would be like 20 grand a year full-time.
Right.
So probably a decent employee, probably 30 to 50 grand and annually. And if you can replace a good portion of an employee's work, you're basically saving tens of thousands of dollars on staffing, on people. And that doesn't mean you'll go fire Steve, but I'm sure you could find more effective stuff for Steve to do at the organization than handling phone calls and leaving voicemails between tenants and vendors and negotiating this stuff, which could be handled by a robot called Property Meld.
Good plug there. Well, and a good point is, and the reality is we're all human, right? We can make mistakes. Us that are more systematic, we have systems to remind us to keep track, keep everything going. But in reality, we're still people. We can make mistakes. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of software. It's a lot of the times able to make sure to do the things that sometimes you might forget to do. So checking to make sure that work was done, right? Steve has got to have a system of how he knows when stuff should be done and to call and find out and make sure it's done. And if Steve doesn't do his job 100% accuracy, you have some stuff slip through the cracks. You have some angry customers, some angry tenants. They're going online to Yelp and they're making a fuss out of something that could be solved pretty easily by utilizing systems and software. So I'm a human being. Jason, I know you don't make mistakes, but the rest of us.
No, I make tons of mistakes. And if you're an entrepreneur, that's like what you're in the business of. You make mistakes and you screw stuff up because that's how you learn and you win. So the people that don't want to take risks, they go work for somebody that's crazy. But if you're an entrepreneur, you're crazy. It's like a given.
It's true.
If you want safety and certainty, you go work for an entrepreneur. And the entrepreneur, just so you know, is crazy. So that safety and certainty you think you have,
it's not.
Yeah, it's not really there. So we have a comment. It says, I used to bill out $125 to $250 an hour for emergency calls and pay $35 to $125 an hour for maintenance person. So it's it can be really costly to handle those, to have somebody taking care of those things. And you can turn around and have fees to do that. But in order to do that, you're penalizing them. So they're not going to want to deal with maintenance things. And then you're going to get pushback from owners and stuff like that. So yeah, if you can put systems in place, and that was a really good point, is that if there's any step in your processes where there's manual human interaction, there are going to be pitfalls and mistakes. There's always problems in there. And one of those mistakes could easily cost you a door. And a door in most markets could be like $2,000 annually, or somewhere around that range. So that's money, and you may be able to keep them on for 3 years. So one of those little problems, one of those slip ups, and it makes you look competent as a company when you get your first maintenance request, when you're in this dangerous stage during this first year, where they're trying to see if you're trustworthy and stable, and they should stay with you forever. to manage their properties, and you screw up one simple maintenance thing and the tenant's complaining and there's a problem and this sort of thing. Yeah. So automation, I'm a big fan of systems and automation. So cool. So how do people find out more about Property Meld?
So Jason, they go to www.propertymeld.com, and that's spelled MELD.com. And basically what they're able to do is they can look through the site, see some videos, how it works and stuff. And there's actually a free demo. They can sign up for a free demo up on the top of the screen, and they can sign up and we'll get organized with them. We will walk them through the software, see how it can work with their operation. So we'll kind of do an initial kind of follow up with them. And so pretty simple way to get a hold of us.
All right, cool. So I put the link here, propertymeld.com, and cool. What else do you want people to know about your software? What are some of the typical questions that people ask, concerns that people might ask? Did we cover everything?
We covered most of it. I mean, it's all about taking the next step. It's understanding in your system how to do things better. And property management is a competitive industry. It's always about trying to get a leg up on your competitor, because you know what? Tenants do talk, owners talk. It's always about finding the next thing that you're going to be able to sit there and get those owners onto your team, get those tenants and vacancies filled, get people to cheerlead for you on the internet. It's always about continual change, and it doesn't matter what business you're in. If you're not changing, you're falling behind. So this is kind of that next step for property managers, to sit there and automate a sector of their business that's one of the biggest pains and one of the biggest black eyes that they can get on the internet. So
cool. I love it. I'm excited to see how this works for some of my clients. So this will be really cool. And I think this Property Meld, you couple this with getting soliciting reviews and feedback, like using our Gather Kudos tool. It could be a game changer for growing their business.
Absolutely.
Automating all this stuff. So that'll be really cool to see how that plays out for some of my clients. So, all right, cool. So check them out at propertymeld.com. If this is the first show you've seen from us on the DoorGrow show, make sure you subscribe. Go to doorgrow.com/subscribe and get on our newsletter, and you'll get notified of these things when they come out onto our blog. And Ray, appreciate you coming and taking time to hang out with me. It's fun.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Jason. Anytime.
We'll have to do some cool stuff in the future together. I think it'd be cool.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure we'll be seeing you around. So,
all right. Sounds good. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it, sir.